Hey guys, welcome to another episode of A Viking Creates. This week I'm going to teach you guys how to turn any pair of goggles into a set of goggles set for the apocalyptic wasteland, like these. If you like what I'm doing here at A Viking Creates and want to help me keep making cool things, head on over to the Patreon at www.patreon.com/A Viking Creates. Even if you can only give $1, every bit helps, and all the money goes back into making cool tutorials for you guys at home. Thanks. Alright, so let's get started. So in order to give our goggles a more apocalyptic wasteland look, we're going to be using a combination of paints from the Citadel line. We'll be using Rune Fang Steel to give us some nice scratches and scrapes on there. And we'll be using a combination of Typhus Corrosion and Ryza Rust to give us a nice rusted out area. So I went ahead and removed the lenses from the goggles. This makes them a little bit easier to work with, and you don't have to worry about scratching them up during sanding. But if your lenses aren't the removable type, you can just cover them up with some painter's tape. So the first step in making these goggles is going to be some sanding. And you're going to be sanding on any area that you want to have some damage or corrosion. The purpose of the sanding is twofold. First, it removes the clear coat to allow you to have a nice tooth for the paint to grab onto. And then it also dulls the area and makes it look a little tarnished itself. So I'll be using 325 grit sandpaper for this, and you're just going to go real lightly on any area that you want to have some corrosion or damage to. Now that we've sanded the areas that we want to have our battle damage at and corrosion, we'll go ahead and be applying some paint using a technique called dry brushing. This is a pretty simple technique that can really give your paint jobs a lot of pop to them. So the way it works is that you can use an old brush, or you can use specialty brushes made for dry brushing techniques. These are typically pretty coarse brushes that you'll use for this. So you just kind of load up the end of the paintbrush there, and then you wipe out all the excess and just wipe that back and forth until you just have paint just on the tip of the bristles. And what I'll do a lot of times is just kind of wipe it across my glove there and just see how that's showing up. So what we'll do is, once we get our paint set to where we want it, we'll start kind of going over these edges at a perpendicular angle and just hitting them back and forth. And as you can see, you start to get some shininess there and some metal showing through. And the more you go, the more it'll add up there pretty quick. And this works well after the sanding because it grabs onto some of the rougher edges there. So we'll just put a little bit right there to kind of rust that corner, or scratch that corner. And then we'll hit some of these little side parts that are raised here. And you can always go back and add more paint. Just kind of hit all the areas that you want to have some scratches and some scrapes on. Corners up here, these angles. Alright, now you've got some nice scratches and some rubbed off paint and a little bit of battle damage here and there. So to do the rest of the areas, we're going to use a combination of two paints. First, we're going to put down some Typhus Corrosion. This is a really great heavy pigment paint, and it gives it a good area for the Rise of Rust to hold on to, which will dry brush over top of it. Typhus Corrosion can be used by itself to give a nice oily kind of look to any metals or any surface you put them on. Alright, now that we've got the Typhus Corrosion on there, we're going to go over with a really light dry brushing of Rise of Rust. The reason you put down the Typhus Corrosion first is it gives the Rise of Rust something to grab onto. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of A Viking Creates. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter at A Viking Creates. If you like what I'm doing here and want to help me keep doing it, head on over to the Patreon at www.patreon.com/A Viking Creates. Even if you can only give $1, but at higher levels, we're going to start having some rewards, and the more people that subscribe, the more rewards we'll add to it. I want to give a huge thank you to Emily Awesome for subscribing to the Patreon. Alright guys, until next time, thanks.